Extra time.
Hello and welcome back to the Extra Time podcast. This week hosted by me, Henry Hill. But don't worry, we have Patrick van Straaten here as a guest back on the show, along with Samuel Obaseki, who's joining us as well.
Oh my days, Henry. You are not my teacher. You are not my parent. Call me Sam, bro. Call me Sam. If you call me Samuel one more time, I'll start calling you Henrietta.
That's all right. I'll live with that. That's completely fine. It's funny we're talking about names, actually, because I think the last time we did this as a three, Pat, we were trying to guess your baby's name.
Yeah, and we were way off.
Yeah, you say that. I said it was going to be something French. And Pat, I mean, I don't know if you want to reveal to the adoring fans, but I mean, how is Fatherhood? How's it all going? Your end?
Oh, it's all good, man. Yeah, well, we called her Coco in the end. So I'd say that, like, with the French guess, you were not that far off. I think I told you afterwards, like a couple of weeks later, that I thought you'd been the closest of everyone who'd guessed, because we got some seriously rogue shouts. But but being a dad is great. Like, she's downstairs now shouting away. She really likes to shout. She's very smiley. Yeah, she's really good fun, and she's starting to get super fat, which is very enjoyable. So we're going on holiday next week, so I'm going to take her swimming for the first time, and I cannot wait because she loves the bath. Sick. I'm hoping that she'll enjoy the pool as well.
Nice.
How are you finding the sleepless nights and that, though? Because I heard that is, even though parenthood is nice, apparently that is just long.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great. Like, it's all right now because, like, since I've been back at work, like, my wife is kind of like doing the lion's share of that. She's on maternity leave this year. The first month is pretty rough, but it's also rough because, like, you're basically fearful all the time. You know, you don't really know what you're doing. Whereas now I feel like if I could go back and do the first month's sleeplessness, but knowing that she was totally well and, like, you know, just being much more confident, you know, and, like, I can do stuff on autopilot now that I couldn't do back then. It'd probably be okay, but I'm not one of those people who can't deal with a lack of sleep. Like, I'm kind of all right with, like, relatively limited sleep. So I would say it's bad, but I don't think it's not quite as bad as people say. It's not like being woken up in the night by your neighbour being a dick. You're being woken up in the night by your baby who you love. So it's like, it's a little bit easier.
I heard it was getting them to go to sleep, which is the challenge. Like, you can be there for an hour and a half and it's almost done, and then something will disturb them, and then you have to start the whole process all over again. I saw that with my cousin when I stayed with him recently. He's in exactly the same position as you. Is that not, like, one of the just unbelievable stressful situations about it all?
Yeah, I mean, when they're really little as well, they shit after every feed, and they feed like 12 times a day. So, like, sometimes you're literally sitting there waiting for your baby to, like, have a shit so that you can put her to bed, because otherwise you'll put her to bed, she'll feel her nappy, she'll wake up really crossly. So that's a bit tedious, but you just kind of, like, over time, I guess you just develop methods. We're now in a period, we're approaching 4 months, where, like she's starting to go through a sleep regression, so she's basically learning how to sleep through the night. So now we're in the process of sleep training her, and that is like the Wild West. Like, that's crazy. But she's a good girl now. Sometimes she'll sleep like 8 hours straight, which is pretty magical.
Amazing.
Wow.
Well, it's awesome to have you back on the podcast. Before we dive into everything, I just wanted to pick up on last week's episode, which was very fun, and so the conclusion of your conversation you had there, where you discussed Lukaku for a bit. Sam, you, I think, made some interesting points about who was sort of redeeming who in this scenario. That aside,
listen. Listen. First of all, I saw a lot of the comments, saw a lot of the abuse, and I want everyone that abused me, including Patrick van Straaten and Joe Tomlinson, to apologise. You know why? Because an interview came out with Lukaku on Chelsea TV. If you guys are a Chelsea fan, go to the Fifth Stand app, and he said that he feels as well that this is a redemption. He didn't say tour, but he said that he's got some form of redemption back at Chelsea. And that's all I was saying. I wasn't saying that he's got anything to prove as a striker, because we know he's a world-class striker. And he proved it against Arsenal. He bullied Mari and showed why he's amazing. But at the same time, I wasn't wrong. And the abuse was too much. Yeah, and I wasn't wrong.
You were wrong,
Pat. So if you don't have to apologize, Pat, because I know that you wouldn't apologize anyway. But I can get the clip, and he says it.
Yeah,
himself.
but that doesn't mean he's right.
If he says it,
that's like when.
What does that mean?
This is like when Pep said that Phil Foden was the best player he'd ever seen. Like, it's just not true.
That's his opinion.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's right. Like, Lukaku, and also that's not his opinion. That's definitely not Pep Guardiola's opinion.
Not his opinion.
Lukaku would say Lukaku is also a Chelsea fan, and he's just like, he just loves the club. Like, I understand if Lukaku feels like he has something to prove at Chelsea, but that's different from you saying that it's his redemption tour when he does have nothing to prove at Chelsea. Like, he can feel however he wants about his own career, but you saying it is ludicrous.
But the reason I'm saying it is because of the reason he's saying it. It's exactly the same.
You can both be wrong.
In the same... Nah, not having it. Not having it.
Oh my God.
I think we're gonna have to move
it's
on,
like one of those.
honest,
It's like one of those things where, like, you can, like, Lukaku can say what he wants about his career, in the same way that, like, you can criticize, like, your parents or whatever. But if somebody else talks some shit about your parents, you might get a bit annoyed,
Oh dear.
Yeah, but
once he said it. Sam, I'm sorry. Sam, I did not realise this would happen when I decided to talk about this. But let's face it, how exciting was that debut? That was so good from Lukaku.
He was quality. He was quality.
It was about as easy a debut as he could possibly have asked for, though.
I think, yeah, Mari made it very easy for him. There's literally a snapshot of Mari, like, falling to the ground in slow motion. Yeah. And it's just like, bro, they just made it so easy for him.
It would have been nicer to see him against, like, Gabriel or something, right? Like, somebody who can actually physically stand up to him, whereas, like, he just ran through, like, Pablo Mari like he was made of paper. Because Pablo Mari is rubbish. Like, he's so bad. But I'm being totally honest. I wasn't even that pissed off. I was happy for Lukaku. Like, after the game, like, when I didn't have to watch it anymore, I was happy for Lukaku.
All right. Well, listen. Let's leave Lukaku for now, and let's talk quickly about the big news of sort of the evening before we have shot this, which is that Kylian Mbappe, he looks like he could be on his way to Real Madrid. Rumours they've lodged a €160 million bid for the Frenchman. This is the club, by the way, who claimed only a few months ago they were completely broke and they needed to start a Super League in order to survive. They now, Florentino Perez has put in a €160 million bid for Mbappe. Whether or not they're going to accept that as it stands remains to be seen. Pat, I just want to throw to you. If you're PSG in this scenario, surely you're accepting this bid, or are you just being stubborn, holding on and letting him see out his contract? So apparently they've had like 6 contract negotiation offers rejected so far. So what are you doing if you're PSG?
If you don't accept the bid, you are making it quite clear that you are not meaningfully running a football club in the way that other football clubs are run, right? Like, if you're saying, yeah, we'll just turn down this 160 million and let him leave for free next summer, you are basically saying, like, we do not care. Like, we're just, like, we're a sinkhole just, like, full of Qatari money. Like, but I'm not sure that matters. Like, if I'm PSG, I accept the bid. But if I'm Mbappe, I don't go. Like, because there's no benefit to going. Like, Real Madrid, and it's not like PSG are not going to win the Champions League this season because Real Madrid are. Like, PSG might not win the Champions League, but Real Madrid are definitely not going to win it either, even with Mbappe, I don't think. So I'm not sure what he's going to go and win this season at Real Madrid that he can't compete for with PSG. If I were him, I'd stay at PSG this year, play alongside Neymar and Messi, so you can always say you played alongside Messi. Pretty cool. And then next summer, leave on a free. And if somebody was offering 160 million euros for you with 1 year left on your contract, you can be pretty certain that next summer you can go to them and say, I want 100 million euros, like, as my signing on fee. Like, why shouldn't I get that? You were going to pay 160 mil with a year left on my contract. So, like, you can pay me that to join now. And then he can pick his club. He can go to Real Madrid and command an insane wage, or he could go to anywhere else in world football. And he will have his pick from everywhere else. And if you were Mbappe, maybe you've grown up idolising Real Madrid, but you probably think, know it's at least worth hearing what like Klopp has to say. It's worth listening to what Bayern have to say, what Man City, Chelsea have to say, like what every big club in world football has to say. I'd be like, let's see what they can offer me. Why not? And in the meantime, you get to play with the greatest player of all time. I just don't really see a downside to him waiting a year. Whereas if he goes this year, if PSG end up winning the Champions League, he'll be a bit annoyed. And his pay will be lower than it would have been anyway. So I think that the smart thing for Mbappe is to wait. On the other hand, if he just wants to go and he's had enough at PSG, like, he can go. It's not going to be that much of a big deal. He's still going to earn an absolutely ridiculous sum of money. But I don't really see, like, Real Madrid can offer him the chance to play alongside Bale and Benzema. Is that more enticing than playing alongside Neymar and Messi? Like, well, yeah, I mean, it just doesn't really make sense to me why he'd want to go now.
Sam, I mean, when I was researching a PSG script recently, it was the idea that if they let him go for free with the Qatar World Cup coming up, this would be sort of a huge embarrassment for them considering all their investment in Mbappe. Are you on the same line as Pat in that they clearly are just operating on a different kind of platform to most other clubs there? Or do you think that they have to accept this offer now to kind of maintain face in the wake of losing one of the second most expensive player forever for free after just 3-4 years of his contract?
To be fair, I'm not shocked that they rejected the first bid if they did reject it, because obviously, like you said, he's the second most expensive player, and realistically, if they've brought all of these players in for him, that like he's saying that he wants to compete for all of the trophies, to compete for the Champions League, and they brought in Messi, Donnarumma, Sergio Ramos, Hakimi, and he's still there thinking, I don't want to sign, then fair enough. But if he's rejected 5 or 6 offers, I would just say, okay, maybe sign 1 year. You know, give us 1 more year with this front three, with this team. See if you can win everything. Maybe create a dynasty, probably one of the best front threes we've seen in world football. And then next year they can sign you, because we all know that his dream is to go to Real Madrid eventually because he looked up to Ronaldo. But like Pat said, I don't know what he sees in that Madrid squad to think, yeah, that's a project that I want to go to right now. And looking at both squads, maybe he, like Pat said, he's just over the PSG project and he doesn't think that he's going to be able to maybe win the Champions League, or maybe there's going to be too much pressure to win it, or he's going to be in either Messi or Neymar's shadow. He seems like that type of player that's got a lot of pride to him, so he kind of wants to be that main man. And I think if he goes to Real Madrid, he'll definitely be their star man. So I think that's probably what he's thinking about. But if I was Mbappe, I'm looking around and seeing Messi and I'm thinking, and Neymar, and I'm thinking, this is beautiful for me to kick on, learn from the best players in the world, and be favourites for the Champions League and win a trophy, win the Champions League with the team that not made me, but they had a big part to play in my progression as a footballer. So I don't know, man. It's a strange one. Yeah. I do think if Madrid come in with a little bit more money, then they will sell him, because they don't want to sell him for free next year. But I think that first offer was the PSG hierarchy realising, oh, you do have money, just give us a like 20 or 25 mil more, and then we'll be good.
That's a crazy amount of money for a player of 1 year left on his deal. And just quickly talking on crazy amounts of money, Pat, I just wanted to get your opinion on this news that Mino Raiola wants Erling Haaland to get £43 million per year as a base salary, and he's willing to take and for that he wants a £34 million commission on top of that deal. Apparently that's put off Bayern Munich this year. I mean, I find it interesting. Wow. If FIFA outlawed sort of third-party ownership of footballers, and then we've got a man who can essentially just command £34 million for his clients to go wherever he wants, and that's no guarantee of like a long-term kind of contract either, knowing the way that you can see players just running down their deals. I mean, Pat, what do you make of those salary demands and the way Raiola operates? Do you think it's completely justified within the world of sort of agents, or is this just kind of frankly ridiculous numbers by this point?
I mean, it is ridiculous. But on the other hand, the amount of money in football is ridiculous too, and I'd rather the money was in the hands of players than in the hands of club owners. So I'd rather that went to Haaland, than stayed in Qatari pockets or whatever. But I do hate thinking about Mino Raiola. I hate thinking about him. I hate thinking about Jorge Mendes. It makes me feel dirty to think about them. I just find it really distasteful. But Raiola's job as an agent is to advocate for his client, is to try and get Haaland as much money as he can. If he can get Haaland that money, he's doing a great job as an agent. But I do find it pretty gross, to be honest. Like, I don't really like thinking about it, and I doubt Haaland really thinks about it. Like, I think this is all just like Raiola going off on his own and seeing how much he can take the piss. And historically, his ability to take the piss has been pretty strong.
That's the thing. Like, eventually, someone will agree to it, and then the cycle rolls on, doesn't it? Like, you can moan and moan about it, but the second someone goes, "All right, if this is what it takes to sign Haaland, then let's just do it," and then next thing you know,
exactly.
It kind of destabilizes the process for future occasions, and we just sort of continue moaning. But at the end of the day, it's the clubs who make these decisions.
Did you see how much they apparently quoted Chelsea? Apparently the deal would have basically been around £275 million, and that was, I think, around 40 million to Raiola, and then they wanted us to pay Haaland, I think 900k or 875k a week on top of the signing on fee. And it's just like, bro, like, fair enough, you're trying to get money for your player, but at the same time, like, come on, man. Obviously, like Pat said, someone is going to pay, and I think United next year are probably going to be down to pay that if no one else does. But that's a lot of money, man. And Raiola, he's just. I don't even know what to call him anymore, man.
It's crazy money and crazy wages. So yeah, big transfers that could be happening down the line, but we're going to look now for the rest of the podcast at deals that have to happen before this window shuts. So what we've done is taken the big six or the big seven, depending how you look at it, depending who you include in that, and we're going to look at some of the deals that we think they need to make before the window shuts. We'll kick off with Manchester City. Interesting one here. Very obvious that they're looking for a striker. We've seen the Harry Kane impasse going on with Spurs. Can they get that deal over the line with 6 days to go? I don't think so, personally. Also, these funny reports that Cristiano Ronaldo is trying to engineer a move to the Etihad.
Yeah, where did that come from?
Well, it looks like Jorge Mendes wants to get him out of Juventus. I think Ronaldo wants to too. He asked to be benched for their opening game against Udinese, and he came on the second half. I thought he got the winner, although it was not to be. I was reading a report that apparently City will pay his 31 million euros per year salary. They're just not willing to pay a transfer fee for a 36-year-old striker. Seems pretty legit. I mean, Pat, out of those two, Ronaldo or Harry Kane, who are you going for initially? And I mean, can you feasibly see Cristiano Ronaldo playing in a City shirt next year?
I mean, I hope not. I'm not very interested in what Cristiano Ronaldo does. Like, I don't really like either deal. Like, I think it's a big overpay for Harry Kane, like, given his injury issues. I would not go and get Ronaldo either, though. Like, I think Kane fits City more. Like, he's got more creativity. Yeah, I don't know. I guess he just like wants to drop into that sort of 10 space in a way that I think suits City's striker, whereas Ronaldo is not going to play that way at all. And actually, in the last couple of years, right, at Juventus, we've seen Ronaldo's kind of dribble numbers go back up. Like, he's kind of fallen out to the wing, like, a little bit more again. Like, he wants to build up a head of steam. Like, I don't know, I just don't really think his game suits City. He'd score a lot of goals, but I'm not really bothered about it. It doesn't interest me. I'm not sure I'd do either at this stage. Like, I think that there are guys like Lautaro Martinez, you know, who's just a huge shot monster who's available. I think that'd be interesting. Just wait till next year and get Haaland if you have to. I really don't think it'd be a disaster. Like, I still don't quite understand. I mean, I guess they do have games, City, where, like, a lot of the time they look like you literally cannot keep them out. And then other games, they look completely toothless. But whenever I watch Gabby Jesus, he's great. And the numbers he puts up are obscene. And I do just sort of think, is this guy never just going to be their striker? Is this what's going to...
He looked really good on the wing, though.
Yeah, he looked amazing the other day, right?
Norwich, he looked really good on the wing. So that might be something that they're looking at, him playing out wide. And I guess that does still mean that they need a middleman. But Torres as well, he started the season quite well as well. So... I don't know. I don't think they need to force a move for any striker right now. Obviously, it would be ideal to have like a main man up top, but I don't think they've tried to be tight with the Harry Kane. I think that they just also agree with Pat and think that the money that Spurs are asking for is a bit too much for a man that's had constant ankle injuries and could miss periods of the season, and they would struggle again.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, Sam, can you see Ferran Torres continuing in this role down the middle? Because that looks like what they might be beginning to use this year. I look at his numbers, and he hasn't actually scored since that kind of crazy Spain 5-3 result against Croatia. Similar to Gabi Jesus, hasn't actually scored since the start of the international break either. He, like you said, he did actually play on the wing a lot in the Copa America for Brazil, so he's completely comfortable playing well. But can you see Ferran Torres going down the middle? And if not, who would you? Is there any striker that you'd potentially move for?
First of all, I think that Ferran Torres and the way they line up, City will be fine this season. I think we saw from last season that they're perfectly all right playing a wide man through the middle. Pep has already said that he loves playing with midfield. Like he loves playing midfielders, and he's perfect football is, I think it's six midfielders. So they don't necessarily need to have a striker up top. But if they do want Harry Kane, they're going to just have to slap the peas. Like, they're going to have to, because Daniel Levy is not going to budge. No matter how much Kane says we had an agreement, or how much he says that you said to me last year that I could move if we don't make Champions League football, he knows how much he wants to get for him. And at this time in the transfer window, he's definitely not going to budge, because the reality is he's going to now struggle to get a replacement for Harry Kane. Yeah. So I don't think that deal was going to happen. I think if they're looking to get a 36-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo, they might as well look into Lewandowski, who said recently that he wants a new challenge, and that was what, I guess the price 110 mil is a bit too much for a 33-year-old, but at the same time, I don't know what's more value for money right now. Like Lewandowski, he's a certified goal scorer. Hasn't had that many injuries while he's been playing for Bayern. I think he had one major injury last season. But apart from that, he's not constantly out like Harry Kane is. So I think that would be interesting. But Pep's already said that he's staying at Bayern, and he's probably doing that to, try and get a new contract, because I think he's only got 2 years left, and they haven't offered him anything else after. But yeah, I think that those are their only options. I don't see anyone else on the market. I think Lautaro Martinez is going to stay at Inter because they've already sold Lukaku, and Inter have actually started quite well, so I think he's going to stay there. So it's going to be interesting. I don't think Harry Kane, unless City just close their eyes and then just slap 150. I don't think Kane is leaving. I think he's going to have to play Euro Conference League and just bite the bullet and stay at Spurs.
I think there's a lot of sense in like what you said, Sam. But like, what I'd be interested to hear from you two guys is, like, leaving aside all the money, age, injury, and stuff, what kind of striker do you think City should be going for? Like, what is the mold of striker? Because when you see them linked with Haaland, I'm like, okay, that's one kind of striker. That is just like a guy who's gonna basically just score goals like all the time. He's gonna be in the box, find space, and score goals. Kane is a different sort of striker, right? Like, and I don't know. These are all elite forwards, but they are all different sorts of players. And I'd just be intrigued to hear what other people think is what City needs.
Well, I personally, I love what Sam said. Pep likes that kind of 6-man midfield almost. I remember reading that Pep loves like handball as a sport. He loves watching the movement, and he likes that kind of sort of scatological attack where sort of you don't quite know where it's coming from. However, I do think that
Henry, no offense, but I don't think scatological means what you think it means.
Okay, let's just reframe that. Oh, Patrick! Oh shit. Okay.
Well, shit is exactly right when it comes to scatology. Yeah.
No, it's scatological. It's like sort of all over the shot. You never know where it's quite coming from. Scatological humour is where it's just kind of random.
No, it isn't.
You do not use words like this when Pat's around.
No, it isn't, Harry.
You use the right words.
You know what? I've sat on many podcasts, not necessarily with you, and I've had to listen to words being used out of context, and it's annoyed me. So actually, I appreciate you. I appreciate you calling. I'm reticent is a word. I'm just going to put it out there. But yeah, it's yeah. So anyway, he likes a kind of random, sort of crazy attack. don't sound intelligent now. However, there is a word. I was desperately searching for it as well. Oh, goodness. Right, back in the game. Anyway, I think what Lukaku's move to Chelsea has shown is that it is important to have the ability to play that different style of football, the out-and-out centre-forward. So I do think they need someone with a bit more presence up top, so at least they can diversify the way they attack if they need to during games, because exactly as you said, Pat, sometimes they look amazing, sometimes they don't, and that's because some sides are able to figure it out a little bit. I'm sorry, like beating Norwich 5-0 is not a good example of why they're so good. Obviously they're going to blitz teams like Norwich who can't really deal with that as a process. So I think Harry Kane's interesting because he does blend between the two. We can see him play further forward as the sort of central forward figure, but he often does, as we've seen, like to drop back and assist more and stuff like that. However, but I which is why Lautaro Martinez, maybe not, but I'd like to see more of sort of a permanent figure in that centre forward role for them. Maybe, if Vlahovic has another good season, for example, because I don't want to judge him too soon, then maybe he could be that kind of guy next season because he is that big centre forward presence. So that's what I think they should go in for, and I don't want to see them go in for like another kind of smallish forward who can maybe sort of buzz about a bit but isn't ultimately the threat that they need. So yeah, that's my sort of take on the situation. A scatological approach to the answer, if we may.
You know what I think? Yeah, I genuinely think that if Gabby Jesus was a bit more clinical, I think that he would be the perfect, like Pep's perfect striker, because his hold up play is good. He can run in behind, he can drift out wide, he can take on a player, but it's just in front of goal. He just hasn't got that like clinical edge that like Aguero had at City, and I think that that's probably one of the biggest things that Pep is probably seeing in his squad that he misses. He needs a striker that can just score from any opportunity, and I think now he's just looking for it to be in any mode, because like you said, Kane isn't like he's not like the an original like centre forward where he's just always trying to get into the box. I think he spelled under Mourinho really changed his game, where he was trying to drop deep. Now if he goes to City, I think he'll have to kind of switch that up again, because City have already got midfielders doing that role, so he's gonna have to now kind of redesign his game again and sit in the box and just be that finisher. And yeah, I think they just need a finisher. They just need a goal scorer that can score from any opportunity, and that's probably the biggest thing that they're missing right now.
Yeah, completely agree. All right, let's try and rattle through some of these other ones because we've got a fair bit to get through right now. Chelsea, Sam. Sort of straight shout at the moment. If you had to make one new signing before the end of the season, they're obviously being linked with Saul Niguez, who have Leicester trying to get off their books. He's on about £300,000 a year. Apparently, he's one of their highest paid players. Sort of pretty monstrous defensive numbers throughout his career. Sort of consistent attack. He's been playing at left wing back for Atletico so far this season, but obviously that is not sort of set in stone. He can sort of drift anywhere between that midfield and often on the back line as well. Would you be going for him or Jules Kounde? So the continuously linked. I'm surprised that deal hasn't almost been done so far. 60 million euros is the kind of price tag we often see quoted for the French centre-half. Pretty monstrous aerial numbers, actually quite surprisingly strong for a player of his stature. Looks like Kurt Zuma's probably going to be on his way to West Ham. Who do you think's more vital? Do you think the centre-back's more vital, or would you be interested in that Saul Niguez deal?
I think Saul Niguez would be a sick signing, but that would just be just having more depth in the midfield, and I don't necessarily think he would be a starter. I think he would just be a rotation player, which isn't a bad thing, but it does mean that players like Ampadu and Loftus-Cheek, they might potentially have to go out on loan if he does come in. I think Jules Kounde is definitely going to happen because we're selling Zuma to West Ham reportedly, allegedly. It's going to happen, and I think that the age. I think he's 22 years old. I think Jules Kounde is 22 years old or around that age, and from the highlights that I've seen of him, he's really good. He's got good footwork. He's strong, like you said, and I think that amount of money for a centre back of his age is more for the future. And I think him, Trevor, Christensen, I think we're trying to basically set up for the future without Thiago Silva and Azpilicueta, because they are quite old. I think Rudiger's going to be probably our senior centre back going into the season, next season and thereafter. So yeah, I think that's going to be a very good sign, and I don't think he's going to start straight away, because the way we're playing right now, we kind of got like a set formation. But I think he's definitely one for the future.
It's interesting. I can't see Saul moving to be a bench option anywhere at this moment in time, which pushes me more towards Manchester United. Pat, if you're Saul, who would you prefer to join? Because surely United have more of an opening for a defensive midfielder, or is there someone else you think they should be targeting over? I mean, for me, Yves Bissouma is the obvious candidate. I'm not sure why no one's moving for him, but what would you be doing in this scenario?
I mean, from Saul's point of view, I think Chelsea would suit him better. Like, he has big defensive numbers, but he's not a conventional DM. Like, he doesn't like sit in the sixth position and like protect the back line. That's never been his game, right? Like, often the best seasons of his career is when he's had the freedom to dribble forward and attack a bit. But generally, everybody in those Simeone midfields is a bit of a Swiss Army knife. And I think that's kind of going to fit in more at Chelsea. Like, I think if I were in charge of Chelsea, I would be looking for a young midfielder with big defensive numbers who in the long term can take over from Jorginho or Conte, because those guys are 30 and 29 now. Like, I think you kind of need that.
We did want that.
Yeah.
We did want that, but West Ham are trying to charge 100 mil.
Yeah, I know, but I think
that's just not
happening. I don't really see why you'd be so stuck on Declan Rice. Like, I really like Declan Rice. I understand his connection to the club, but I think you could go and get Camavinga, Bruno Guimaraes, Maxence Caqueret, like one of these guys who's much cheaper and who's going to be happy to be on the bench for now. Because I don't think that homegrown is going to be a particular issue for you because of the strength of your academy and some of those players who are now nailed on starters, like so I guess that I would look for those types, but again, those are people who can press and maybe dribble a little bit more. For Man United, what I'd want is much more of a sitter. Like, Camavinga has big dribble numbers. Guimaraes like runs out and presses really aggressively. That's actually not necessarily what I want for United. Like, I would want a guy who is staying in that defensive zone, who's going to patrol the line in front of the centre backs, so that Pogba and Fernandes have more freedom. Like, you need someone really disciplined. So I love Yves Bissouma, but I think Yves Bissouma would make more sense for a City or a Chelsea than he would for a United, because he's not a guy who just sits there. Like, when you look at his good performances recently, you think about that goal he made against who was it? Where he nabbed the ball and like gave it to Mopé and Mopé scored. Like, that happened like just this last weekend.
The first game of the season.
Yeah.
No,
so that was Burnley. Was that Burnley then?
Yeah.
Or the first game of the season was Burnley, but I'm not sure. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Like, but you look at where Bissouma is there. He's really high up the field.
The ball, yeah.
And I don't think that is what Man United necessarily should be looking for. I think they want someone who's not getting out of position, who's not going herring upfield. I think they need somebody who's got big defensive numbers, but is reasonably disciplined positionally and is a great passer. So I thought about this years ago, and like, I still maintain that I think maybe the best candidate for that is someone like Rodrigo Bentancur.
Wow.
From Juve. Like, I do think that Juve are there for the taking this summer. I think that they probably could do with making a big sale. And Bentancur, he has big pressure numbers, big defensive action numbers, but he doesn't get caught out of position a lot. He's an exceptional passer. I mean, I think he maintains something like an 88, 89% pass accuracy, but I think he's in the top 9% of midfielders for progressive passes. So he's very accurate with his passes, despite attempting quite risky ones. But he never gets forward for himself, really, or at least he doesn't now. There was a time he did. That, I think, would fit them a lot better, because I don't see the benefit of having Bissouma run upfield if it means that Pogba or Bruno is hanging back. Like, as much as I love Bissouma, like, he is not as good at those things as Pogba and Bruno. So if you get him, you're going to have to adapt him a little bit more. Indeed, he would make more sense to me. But
yes.
But obviously, if you are Man United and you go and get Bissouma, he's going to improve your midfield. Like, he's going to be great. It's just going to be a bit of an adjustment. And what I don't understand about United is I feel like they're half-arsing it. Like, they go and get Varane, great signing. They go and get Sancho, perhaps the signing of the summer. But then they're not. I'm not sure that they're willing to go the final step and deal with the massive issue that they've got in that number 6 position. And I don't know why they don't do it. Even if they don't have the imagination to go and try and get Bentancur or to go and get somebody like Aurélien Tchouameni, you know, who's been linked to them from Monaco. Like, you could just do it with Premier League players. If they got like Basuma and Neves, like midfield sorted, like they're done. Like, it's that simple. But as much as you look at if you asked anybody, like, why are Man United not as favoured for a title charge as Chelsea or City, or in my opinion, Liverpool, though people seem to weirdly be forgetting about Liverpool, I think everyone would agree the issue is the number 6 role. The issue is the fact that they're still playing Fred and McTominay in midfield. It's so clear. I don't know.
And Matic.
Yeah. It's so clear that that's the problem. I don't know why they're not addressing it.
I'm surprised that they didn't go for a player like Frankie de Jong, especially with Barcelona's current situation where they're still struggling to sign on players and register signings that they made in the summer. I think if you put a decent price on Frankie de Jong, they probably could have like lured him out of Barcelona, and with the Manchester United project, I'm sure he would have seen it as much as desirable as the Barcelona situation as well. So I think that was interesting. I remember Joe speaking about it in a lot. I think last week or the week before, and when he said it, I was like, yeah, like that made so much sense. He's got good dribbling numbers. He knows how to play CDM. He can play centre back as well. He's quite young, so he fits the profile of a player that United will want to be signing for the future. So I'm surprised that they haven't gone for him as well, to be honest.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel like Frankie de Jong must be, even by Barcelona standards, one of the more untouchable players in that squad. He's sort of, alongside Pedri, really is that future, and Ansu Fati, the future of that club going forward, to see what they can sort of generate. So you're going for Frankie de Jong in like an ideal world as a player you'd like to see United sign, and Pat, you're going for Rodrigo Bentancur, or potentially sort of mix it with some Premier League midfielders there. I completely agree that is the kind of issue that needs to be solved at United. If we just look at Liverpool quickly, it's a bit more nuanced. It looks like a lot of their money's gone into renewing contracts this year. It looks like they're going to have to smash their wage bracket to continue to get Salah to sign on beyond his 2023 expiry date. They've just got Robertson, Fabinho, Alisson, Trent as well. He's just signed a new deal. People forget that Liverpool's actual wage structure's sort of blown up about 25% in the last sort of 2-3 years as they've bonus payments and stuff like that. Actually just releasing a explained video on this at the moment. So that's where their money is going. But that said, they've made a sort of profit with their player sales so far this summer. Just brought in Ibrahima Konate. Pat, if you're looking at that Liverpool squad, which I think still looks unbelievably strong, especially with Fabinho pushing back up into midfield, Harvey Elliott coming into the fold looking impressive. Don't want to judge him too soon. But if you had to make one addition there, what would it be before the summer is out?
Well, yeah, I think Elliott and Jones basically solve your midfield depth issue. So I think that's probably sorted, and centre back is sorted. There's nowhere particularly weak in that squad, but, and I've said this for a long time, I think Liverpool's plan all along to evolve this side to like the next version of it was that they would sell one of their forwards last summer, this summer, or next summer. So like at 28, 29, or 30. I think that would have been their plan. And because of COVID, nobody's got the money to do it. And also maybe some clubs are getting a bit smarter and not going for old attackers as much as they used to. Plus Mane had a bit of a down season. Firmino had a bit of a down season. But I think I'd be really intrigued to talk to somebody there behind the scenes and find out like how it changed their plans. Because I really do think that they thought, we're getting Diogo Jota, we probably sell a forward in 2021 and buy a forward in 2021. Well, because you can't shift one of your big forwards this summer, I think that rather than going out and getting a guaranteed starter, in which case they probably would have competed for Sancho or something, you should maybe just take a gamble on a younger forward. Like Shaqiri's gone out, that's a little bit of depth. Origi I've never rated and, gone basically. Jota, great. But I think that it would be interesting to try somebody as a potential long-term Firmino replacement. And if it doesn't work out, if you get somebody young, you'll still be able to sell them, because Liverpool, because they're such a good side, have had really great success selling. They sold like Wilson this summer for 12 mil. They sold Grujic for 8 mil. Like, these are guys who are never going to play for Liverpool. They've got 20 mil for them. So I thought Amin Gouiri might be quite interesting from Nice, because he's got some of that Firmino special sauce. Like, Firmino is a guy who like puts up big numbers as a striker. Even last season, his numbers were exceptional. Like, his underlying numbers, he just couldn't finish. Well, Gouiri has put up quite similar attacking numbers, like 2.5 shots a game, over 0.5 xG, as a 21-year-old in a pretty mediocre Nice attack in Ligue 1. So that would mean that he's like going to be okay playing as forward. But what makes him interesting is that lots of defensive work, good creativity. I think he's got 1.6 key pass a game, a couple of dribbles, loads of progressive carries. So he's a guy who can drop deep and link play. That is what's so special about Firmino, right? So I think it would be interesting if they took a gamble on somebody like that. I don't think it would be expensive. And like I say, if it didn't work out, you've got a 22-year-old, perfectly passable rotation forward who you could almost certainly sell back to France or to somebody else. And that's if he doesn't end up good enough for Liverpool. He could end up not good enough for Liverpool, but still be like a Europa League level forward. So I think that would be the smart, cheap move to make this summer. It's got a pretty low risk and a potentially very high yield. So that might be quite interesting if I were them. But they don't need an awful lot. The one concern would be if Mane's numbers don't rebound this summer, if Firmino doesn't rebound this season, you may end up really struggling to move them on next year. And then people know you need a forward and they know you need to sell, and it's just a more difficult situation all round.
Yeah, I'm getting a sort of Yago Aspas kind of flashbacks when you talk about that sort of the deal there for Gouiri from Nice. It could potentially be a really smart option there. I agree. If we just look at one of the other names who's been linked with a lot of the clubs in the Big Six at the moment, it's Noni Madueke from PSV. Absolutely balling out this season so far. I've seen him linked with Leicester and Spurs so far. Rodgers apparently wants another attacker. I thought maybe Philippe Coutinho could be a really interesting sort of addition if they could get they just need to upgrade Jose Perez. I think that's just the bottom line. I think he's ultimately, in my opinion, the thing. If they're serious about pushing on, and Perez's numbers just simply aren't sort of at the level they need to be, and I think they need to upgrade their sort of central attacking midfield options, and maybe sort of Madueke, although he does play a bit further out on the wing, he could be the kind of guy. Sam, he's a quality player. Where would you rather see him go? Would you see him go to Spurs? Do you think that could happen, or would you see him go back to Leicester?
I think Leicester makes a lot of sense for a player like him, especially with that Perez situation you just said, because I'm still shocked that he starts for them, to be honest, because every time I see him play, I don't really understand how he starts over some of their players. But I think that's just a Leicester problem, like in terms of their squad depth going forward. So I think that the way he started this season, he scored 6 times for PSV in all competitions already, and he's got that confidence, to take on a player. He scored a double against Ajax as well, and I think they kind of need a re-up in terms of their attacking players. I think Maddison hasn't started the season that great. Harvey Barnes is obviously coming back from injury, so he's going to take a while to come back. Perez isn't that great. I just don't really rate him. So I think that would be a very good signing for Leicester. I think Spurs, they're kind of their front three, even without Kane, is kind of set in stone in a sense with Son, Moura and Bergwijn. So I think it would be harder for him to kind of break into that front three, even though it won't be that difficult because they're not like world beaters. But at the same time, I think the way Leicester play and the way Rodgers deals with young players and kind of gets them up to speed for the Premier League, I think that would be a good place for him to go. But I also, when you put Philippe Coutinho to Leicester, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think him basically being another option in that 10 role for Maddison might be a good thing for Maddison, because I don't think he's been that threatened in terms of his position. He kind of knows, even though they have Tielemans, and Tielemans can kind of play in that position as well, but I think having a player like Coutinho in that squad will kind of lift the rest of their players, because we haven't seen Coutinho at top level in a while now. But if Rodgers can get him to a place where he was when he was at Liverpool, and that was time ago, then I think that would be a very good signing for Leicester as well.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, just quickly on Spurs, Pate, they're close to signing Pape Sarr from FC Metz. He's obviously going to go back on loan for a year, so we'll wait and see how he comes along. But the big name they've been linked with at the moment is Adama Traore. But also there's this Ndombele situation where it looks like they're going to need another midfielder, unless Oliver Skipp or Harry Winks in the central midfield continues to play. I've seen Franck Kessié linked with potentially moving to Tottenham. If you were them, would you be going for someone like Adama Traore, who obviously undoubted talent, but sort of end product still slightly lacking? Or would you be looking at someone like Kessié? Where do you think the bigger hole in their squad is as we approach the end of the window?
I don't think I'd go for either of those players. I do like Adama Traore, I just don't think he's a good fit there. And I quite like that he hasn't been finishing yet, but he's putting up crazy numbers through the middle for Wolves this season. So I quite like to see that rather than just seeing him whip crosses in forever. I think they're okay in midfield, and I think if they wanted a midfielder, I'm not sure Kessié is the right guy. Kessié doesn't really do that much except run into the box and try and score goals. I think you've got Dele Alli who could do that to much better effect. And I still think with their midfield, they've got Højbjerg. If Ndombele goes, they'll get somebody in. Reports they're interested in now, although he's quite a different sort of player now. But Lo Celso, I think they're kind of okay there. I would, to me, I'd be thinking, well, I don't know, actually. I suppose if Kane doesn't go this summer, he probably will never go because nobody's going to pay, huge money for him next season. But I sort of was thinking about who they could go for as a forward if they were considering letting Kane go. And I do think it'd be interesting for them to have a little nibble at Timo Werner. I think that'd be really interesting. If Chelsea would let him go, he does kind of make sense, right? He could play wide, he could play through the middle, big shot output, reasonably young, extremely fast. It'd be interesting to see him play with Son. So that is something that I'd consider. But I don't know. I think a wide forward is the right move for them. I just don't think Adama Traore is necessarily the best option on the market.
I want to see Calvert-Lewin. I want to see Calvert-Lewin go to Spurs. I think that would be really cool. Yeah,
great.
I think that's an upgrade. Although I think Everton are actually going to have a very good season this year. But
they look good.
I'd love to see Calvert-Lewin sort of over there, especially with Son around him, which could be fun. All right, we're running out of time. Just quickly, Pat, give us the situation on Arsenal. It looks like a lot of their business is essentially done. It's now just focusing on selling some of their trash, which they've got floating around.
They were lucky to even be in this conversation, to be honest, because we said top 6 club. Yeah. So I don't know how they've squeezed into this conversation, but because Pat's on, we might as well.
I think we actually said big 6, right? And from that point of view, that's the thing that will never change. Arsenal can be as bad as they want. Man United have been bad at points in the last 10 years. Chelsea have as well. But the one thing that's never really going to happen is that their financial power is going to be usurped. That's the issue, right? When we talk about Leicester, we're like, why don't they have the right squad depth? And you think, because they don't have the right money. So they have to build really carefully. I mean, I think that if Arsenal had got a result against Brentford, it would basically be fine. They got schooled by Chelsea. That's what I expected. I assume they'll lose to Man City. But everyone's like, God, they're in crisis. They're in crisis. And I think sometimes you can just look at the schedule and say, okay, around that time, we're going to start seeing rumours about that club being in crisis. Because the schedule's difficult. Don't get me wrong. There's loads wrong with Arsenal. And I do think that, if once players are back and fit, Arteta can't show something by kind of mid-autumn, recover the form that he did in the back half of last season, then I do think you've got to think about who comes next as a manager. But right now, they can just get bullied through the middle because they're playing Lokonga, who's a kid and needs to bulk up, and Ben White, who's quite small and weak. Those to me are players that say the squad screams to me right now, play a back 3. I think if Arsenal had played a back 3 the other day, they'd have been much better off. And I generally think the talent they have suits a back 3. They'll be much better off as well once some of their players like Gabriel and Partey come back. Will really firm them up through the middle. But yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with everything Arsenal do. I think they've been quite badly run for quite a long time. But they're buying young players this summer, young good players. If they continue to buy young good players, they'll basically be fine in the long term, especially given the players coming through the academy. What Arsenal need to sign, what Arsenal need to think about, it's not going to come this summer. But the next signing they really need to think about is a game-changing attacker. That needs to be what they get next year. They need to go out next summer and get the best striker they possibly can. And again, I think people really underrate what is possible for Premier League clubs, even ones in a bad situation, because of the wages. Like, people say, oh, Conte, why would he go to Arsenal? It's like, well, because Arsenal can afford to pay his wages, and there are very few clubs which can right now. So I think that if Arsenal went next summer and tried to get Alexander Isak or Lautaro Martinez, they'd have to pay a lot in wages, but that should be what they do. They need to go and get a forward next summer who puts up big shot numbers, who can press, and that is probably going to be the most important thing for their long-term future. You know, if they could find the money even for a Calvert-Lewin, that'd be interesting. So yeah, that's not going to happen this summer, but I don't really worry all that much. Like, Ben White is 23. Like, a load of these guys are between 19 and 24. I think in 3 years' time, the team will be all right. And I wonder if the board maybe said to Arteta, look, we understand you're buying 21, 22-year-olds this summer and are therefore giving him a little bit more leeway with results. But I think it's absolutely ridiculous to, like... I think it was a particularly bad tactical performance from Arteta against Chelsea, but I also didn't expect... He could have managed that game perfectly and we would probably still have lost. That's fine. Even though actually I thought Chelsea were quite bad defensively on the day. Quite bad defensively. It just didn't matter because Arsenal had no idea how to exploit it. So yeah, I don't know really. Like, there are lots of things to be sorted at Arsenal, but I also think our fans are just like ridiculous.
I think I don't know. I hear both sides in it because I don't think Arsenal have had the worst transfer window. Obviously, they've spent the most out of the in the Premier League. Yeah.
Well, they had the most to do.
But yeah, exactly. But when I saw the Ben White signing for 15 mil, I didn't necessarily think that was bad. Lukonga, didn't really know that much about him, but every time I've seen him play for Arsenal, he hasn't been. He's been one of their best players.
Yeah.
I think Odegaard for 30 mil is a good signing. But like I said in one of the previous podcasts, I think that, like you just said, you need that one signing, that one forward signing that basically just changes everything. Basically how, you know, when you originally signed Aubameyang and there was a hype around, oh, we've finally got a goal scorer that's going to score from every opportunity he gets, and we know that if the ball is at his feet in the 6-yard box, he's going to score it. I think you need that type of signing. And also, I don't know, I can't really blame you for not being able to sell your dead weight because we know the current climate within the football teams and stuff. But I think if you can get rid of at least half of the players that you don't want, obviously you've got Willian going to Corinthians, Kolasinac going to Fenerbahce, Torreira to Fiorentina, and Eddie probably going to Crystal Palace. So that's half of them, yeah. So if that process can kind of carry on, and then you maybe just push for a top 6 finish this season, I think that will be a good season for Arsenal. But the way it's going, I would be worried. I'd be worried as an Arsenal fan, just because if it does continue in this way where you still don't really have an identity where we can say, okay, cool, this is how Arteta wants Arsenal to play. Because I'm not necessarily sure anymore, because last season there was patches where I was like, okay, cool, he wants to play this way, but now it's like he's kind of switching it up. And to be fair to him, he's not really had the best options with a lot of the players coming back with COVID positive tests and that, so that doesn't help as well. But when he does get all the players back and they're all available, that's when the test is really there. If he doesn't have a good run of games after all the players are back, after Aubameyang's back, Lacazette, Ben White, then that's when he's in trouble.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that first thing you said is like particularly correct. Like, I think people say Arsenal's squad is bad. I don't think it's bad. I think it's weak in some positions, but the problem isn't that the squad's not bad long term. The problem is that there's no star quality. So I think, that one star attacker like really does make a huge difference, and that should be, Arsenal needs to be planning that like a year out, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, that's good. We've ended the ended the podcast on Sam and Pat agreeing on a point, which is a nice way.
Finally.
I was going to mention Kieran Trippier, but what a sad end to the podcast that would be. So we'll move on from there. That's it. That's all we've got time for, I think, today on the Extra Time Pod. Sam, what are you working on Snapchat? What are you doing at the moment, which our viewers should go check out?
If you want to know everything about the Mbappe transfer, whether he's going to come to the Premier League or whether he's finally going to go to Real Madrid, then go onto Snapchat and we'll fill you in with all the details.
Pat, anything you've been scripting which you feel particularly inspired by?
I recently wrote and explained about how PSG were able to sign Messi this summer and their manoeuvrings financially, and I did another one about why Arsenal is so bad at transfers, which seems relevant right now.
Nice. All right, go check those out if you haven't already. Make sure you're liked and subscribed to the podcast Football Daily channel if you haven't already. Tell your friends, tell everyone. We'll be here every week. Anyway, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.